Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Commander with the weekly comic book roundup. I'm going to get things started with this week's X-Men books as well as Spider-Man books, starting with X-Men number 14, which is chapter 12 in Ten of Swords. Where we left off, the sword bearers of both Krakoa and Arakko had arrived at the Starlight Citadel, and one of the sword bearers of Arakko was revealed to be none other than Annihilation was revealed to be none other than the long thought dead wife of Apocalypse, Genesis. And so the issue picks up. Apocalypse is in one of the gardens of the Starlight Citadel, and Genesis comes to him wishing to speak with him. She wields the Twilight Blade, and he explains that he's not. She asks if he's hiding from her, and he says he wanted some peace before the battle tomorrow. She says, asks if he's a man of peace, then then it asks if he's fallen so far, to which he then responds that she's wielding the Twilight Blade. Who again is it that has fallen? And she says simply that Twilight Blade is a tool, plain and simple. A powerful one, but no more than a tool. And not the most dangerous thing in the garden the two are in. And so Apocalypse and Genesis stick their swords in the ground and go for a walk. Which brings us a mutant's history of Arakko and the fallen world of Amenth. So we get the whole thing where the Twilight Blade, the Twilight Sword of the enemy, tore the world asunder, and what was an Okara became Krakoa and Arakko. And from the chasm between them, from Amenth, the enemy poured into this world. Mutants fought them. The mutants of Okara fought them off. And in Sabanur, when it was figured out how to close the rift between the two worlds, Sabanur stayed on the other side, whereas the rest, his horsemen, his children, and his wife, went forward. To explain, hundreds of mutants lost their mind and fled into the wastelands that surrounded Arakko. They lost 1/10 of their strength in less than an hour. But they steadied themselves, regrouped, ready for war. However, when Genesis looked out, instead of an enemy army and a fight to the death, she saw nothing but an endless field decorated with the bodies of a fallen horde. The White Sword and his 100 champions had bought them time, and they used it well. The mutant alchemists and engineers of Arakko made an armor for Arakko. They raised 10 towers, and all the land between them became a killing field. When the army of Amenth finally came, they showed them what real mutants could become when forced to truly fight for their survival. They were a machine of death, and for thousands of years the Horde died at their border. Generations of mutants lived and died, never knowing defeat. Children of war, strong and fit for the days in which they lived. And we're shown the birth of War's son. But they lived only inside their walls. It made them arrogant and ignorant of what Amenth truly was. The prophet, Idil, went blind to seeing their sure defeat in the future. And after this, he told the council, and Genesis laughed at him. Laughed at him and threatened to remove his weak head from his shoulders. But he sounded a warning, and she knew no fear. She cowers from nothing. So she raised an army of mutant reavers, and for the first time they took the war to Amenth. 200 years ago, they pushed so far that they reached the Ivory Spire, the stronghold of the long-thought-lost White Sword, Purity. Their greatest healer, external, immortal, the White Sword, resurrected his 100 champions every morning, and they're right out to slaughter Empyre demons. To say the millennia that had passed changed him is to sound like a fool. The death and resurrection cycle he lived each day had become his religion. To the mutants of Arakko, he was as alien as the horde he raged against, and they the same to him. It wasn't that he killed scores of mutants when he drove them out that pained her so. If they were fit, they would have survived, she reckons. No, it was that when they first tasted defeat, it was at the hands of one of their own. She adds, it was a spoiled meat that was the first of many ill meals to follow. She returned to Arakko to find Iska waiting for them, her sister. Her mutant power being that she cannot lose. And she switched sides in the war, having joined Amenth. She had been sent to invite Genesis to parley with Annihilation at the seat of the Golden Helm's power, the capital city of Amenth. Genesis agreed eventually, told her she would hear the Golden Helm and what it had to say, and entertained the words of Annihilation. When she entered the Great Hall, the words of the prophet rang in her ears, and she understood what she was witnessing, or that she was witnessing a rocky doom with her own eyes. The mutants who fled in the crossing, the 1 in 10 thought lost to the wasteland, Genesis discovered what happened to them. What they thought was thousands of years of battle with the enemy was really just them biding their time, breeding the mutants they had captured with Empyre demons to produce a hybrid warrior race. It was the birth of summoners and the origin of the black experiments of the vile schools. She was enraged. The Golden Helm offered her a kind of peace. Instead, she offered Annihilation her sword. And they battled to the death as all of it looked on. And Genesis won. She took Annihilation's life, took her head, and in doing so, sacrificed her own. She did not know what victory meant, after all. Did not know what it cost. Whoever defeats the helm claims the helm. Whoever wears that crown controls the land. It's called Annihilation for a reason, after all. The Golden Helm is the only thing that keeps the Amenthi horde in check. Without it, the demons of that dark world would consume everything or die trying. For 100 years, Genesis refused to wear the helm. And for 100 years, as a prisoner, she watched as the mad horde, the true might of Amenth, cracked the walls of Arakko. She watched mutants die and towers fall, but still she refused. They'd all come here to die if need be, to save Earth from Amenthi hell. And there was still hope. She held on to the hope that Apocalypse would raise a new mutant society, a greater one, and with its coming a mutant army that would save them all. But then word came from outside the walls. The greatest mutants and mages of Arakko, fools who'd forgotten their own history, had carved holes in the heavens and reopened what so many had died to close. The cry for help was a surrender. And she knew then that all of the old ways were lost, and so she placed the Golden Helm on her head and surrendered to Amenth. She hoped to control it, to dominate it, but she failed. Annihilation marched the hordes into Arakko. It surrendered to the Golden Helm, as did their children, as did the whole of their land. It wants them all, and because it wants them all, Genesis does as well. Annihilation wants it all, and because Annihilation wants it all, so does Genesis. So it was on to Dryador and forward to Krakoa. And so now Apocalypse knows what really happened. The price Genesis paid, her greatest victory and greatest defeat. Apocalypse's biggest takeaway is that she can fight it. And thusly, Genesis is the strongest person he knows. She simply says that no one is that strong. No one. She fights for it. Now it wants everything, so she wants everything. And most of all, she wants Krakoa. But Apocalypse tells her that it is not hers to take. And they have built something there for all mutants, which includes their children and her. She asks if it can last. Arakko was forged in war, strong and fit, built to truly endure. What Apocalypse and the others have made on Krakoa Was it with soft hands and... Or she asked if it was made with soft hands and raised on soft earth. She looks at him and thinks so. But she says she will soon see what Krakoa has to offer, and what Apocalypse has to offer as well. We also get the 3 laws of Arakko. Make more mutants, destroy our enemies, defend this broken land. And some additional history of Arakko. But that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Chapter 13 of Ten of Swords. Here in a second. And Chapter 13 is in Marauders, number 14. So we get first off the menu of the Banquet of Sword Bearers and the invitation and all. The Sword Bearers of Arakko and Krakoa are cordially invited to a state dinner in the Starlight Citadel's Hall of Fallen Banners, and the birds sing the hour of 8. Amuz Bush, Ghost Fig Dry Age in the Crooked Market during the double winds flowing from Blightspoke. Sabalathian wine, fermented from the extracts of the nobles, served in stemware harvested from the crystalline bones of lunar bats. First course, a sea leaf salad harvested from the shadow trench and braised in the urine of Orkina, the giant squid. Second course, scarab stuffed with a cumin-spiced farro brain mash and a wine reduction. Third course, chef's tasting of raw delicacies originating from the Dryador Sea. Each bite is the last of its kind. Fourth course, the horned beast, served whole and cooked to perfection, dry-aged for 3 moons while being serenaded by Opal Luna Saturnine's personal choir. Fifth course, chilled creme of Neptune's glaciers with honey-drizzled fey wings. We end with a quote from Saturnine. Eat of my blood, drink of my wine, before you die, together we dine. And so, Wolverine is thinking about what's to come. So he hates parties. Feels like him and a lot of his friends are being fattened up for the slaughter. But he will admit the booze is good. That'll put the wind in his sails for the nasty bit of business he's got to do tonight. At the party. Outside the party, people are being greeted, and there's actually socializing occurring between some of the X-Men and between the Sword Bearers of Krakoa and Arakko. Death and Storm actually seem to be on fairly good terms almost immediately. What was her name? Bay the Blood Moon, however, is not so polite upon seeing being acknowledged by Cypher. Some of the X-Men are attempting to also figure out the weaknesses of their opponents. And Pog appears to be maybe the hardest one to find a weak spot for. With Storm asking Magic if Pog is a soft spot, and well, Magic says she's working on it, while Wolverine says he has plenty of soft spots, just none that are on the outside. But Saturnine welcomes the Sword Bearers and other nobles of Otherworld to the banquet. As well, the nobles of Otherworld, including Jim Jaspers of the Crooked Market, Lady Roma of the Fae, Vesperide, Colony Queen of Hot Hive, Famine, Regent of the former Kingdom of Dryador. However, Famine would much rather dispense with the pleasantries and just so that they can spend as little time as he wishes to be there as no longer he wishes to be there no longer than necessary. Wolverine has also opted to simply declare that this whole thing is Brian Braddock's fault. And he explains that since Brian has the favor of the woman who's deciding everyone's fate, maybe Logan, if he were in Brian's shoes, would be inclined to take one for the team and give the lady what she's clearly after. Brian. Brian's response is to simply remind Logan that he, Brian, is a married man. Betsy also tells Logan to piss off as he's being a bore. But he adds, Wolverine responds saying he was married once, tricky business. But you know who hasn't been married? Cypher. He ain't the only one. Magic and Cable ain't never been married. They have yet to make that very special mistake. And Wolverine says that when they're fighting to the death, he does not think they'll watch, and he'll watch, but he'll be watching the guy that could have stopped it, Brian. Turns out that Gorgon and Magic are also divvying up, are strategizing, watching the various sword bearers. Apparently, War is right-handed. Magic declares that the chonky dinosaurs are going to be a problem, though Gorgon states that every beast has a softness beyond its armor. And it also relates that Death favors his left side. Magic thinks that Redroot's shrubbery hides other eyes. But the thing she can't figure out is whether or not Iska favors her right or left. So they have to find out. They engage her in conversation, propose a toast, each drops their glasses. She's ambidextrous. And she just opts to return the favor. So Magic opens a portal and has the glasses go through, righted. Iska remarks upon seeing this that this will be fun. So and Magic then asks Gorgon what Iska's soft spot is, and he doesn't know. He advises Magic to kill as many as fast as she can, and Iska's sword will break them. Later, Death and Storm share a dance. Discussing certain things, like the fact that while she does not know him particularly, she is well acquainted with Death. He states that the other sword bearers of their hosts have tasted death many times, in many ways, but she hasn't. And she simply says that he's wrong. She knows death. And he promptly corrects it. I didn't mean any offense. She's not offended. But she explains that she's been dancing with death her entire life. First as a girl living on the streets, and later as leader of the X-Men, a role that taught her how to sway death. So she neither fears nor desires him, but she knows him. And this is as close as she will allow him. And then Saturnine, the call is made for the first course, and so everyone's seated. Saturnine explains that fate has drawn them all together, but she's not unkind. Whatever may befall the sword bearers tomorrow, they will dine like royalty this evening. She notices, though, that Logan appears to have a burdened mind. and tells him there's no reason for him to hold his tongue. He says he ain't a man of many words. And so War asks what it is that disturbs him. He gets up and says that, it doesn't have to be like this. She can just take what she wants. She doesn't need to create all the collateral damage. She states he's a very singular worldview, but doesn't expect Wolverine to understand the reasons for the many changes to come. He cuts her off, saying, telling her to say what she means. There's a lot of death ahead. However, she said exactly what she meant. Death is the great change, and everything dies. And he simply pops his claws and says, "Lady," those are just the famous last words, as he stabs her with all 6 claws. And the issue ends with a quote from Wolverine. I'll tell you what joins us all. Everything dies if you can figure out how to kill it. That is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next entry. Moving away from the current X-Men timeline to various points before. With Wolverine, Black, White, and Blood, #1. This is the first in an anthology miniseries starring Wolverine. Each issue will contain, I believe, 3 stories, each one written by a different writer, drawn by a different artist, and of course, obviously focusing on Wolverine, and drawn in 3 colors: black, white, and blood red. First off, we got the Beast within them. This takes place during the Weapon X days. There's the scientists for Weapon X are setting a trap for someone for Wolverine to take on. He narrates, saying to himself, he's a monster. Case closed. And he asks, are we born or are we made? It's the only question I'd ask my old pals at the Weapon X program, if I could. I remember the abduction and not much for a while. I can't remember the surgeries or the recovery. One of my few mercies, I reckon. But I'll remember the weeks that followed. They went easy on me at first. They beta tested me against some wolves, but that wasn't much of a scrap. Then they made me fight bears and some men who were like me. Souls that wouldn't be missed. I can't remember their faces, but at night when sleep is elusive, I can still hear their screams. Turns out that for doing this, they would, especially after the surgery, the major surgery, bonding the adamantium to his skeleton, they would keep him on a massive electromagnet for transportation purposes, and it makes sense. A massive magnet keeps him in place. He can't pull his arm free to start slicing and dicing everybody. But yeah, so the magnet goes off, and he explains eventually his monsters figured out that no man was going to hurt him. So they went fishing for tougher customers. And it turns out that the trap they've been setting up is potentially a fight with a Wendigo. And so Hines and Cornelius were watching. Hines explains that she didn't like it when they used the wolves or the bears. And she states that at least when Wolverine or at least when the experiment fights this monster, it seems fair. As the fight between Wolverine and Wendigo rages on, Wendigo says something in French. I'm probably going to butcher this, but pourquoi tu me fais ça? And Wolverine's thoughts explains that it wasn't until he heard a man's voice from inside the monster that he started to find himself again. As it, he's a monster. I'm a monster. But what about the men and women of the Weapon X program? Were they born monsters, or did something twist them up? Wolverine gets tranked heavily. Wendigo's already down. They want to study both. They want to study the Wendigo, see what it's made of. Wolverine adds in his thoughts. They dedicated their lives to science, but they didn't cure or fix anything. They took it all, swiped everything from me, except what mattered most. He sees a reflection of himself in the blood, or in a puddle of blood, as he's let off. Next up, we've got I Shall Be a Wolf by Matthew Rosenberg and Joshua Cassara. It starts in Budapest 39 hours ago. Wolverine is trying to burn a book while surrounded by Hydra agents, some in pieces, others just fine and aiming weapons at him. He's clearly been shot to hell. At an undisclosed location now, he's being tortured in apparently he's being beaten with a bat. He's got a knife stuck in his shoulder. And the Grand Inquisitor of Hydra, Gregor Hirsch, is brought out. And he says he's taking over the questioning of Wolverine. The agent that was using the baseball bat says to Wolverine that he should have talked to him while he had the chance, bub. But Hirsch asks Wolverine if he knows why Hirsch is upset. Wolverine says, "You just found out your team lost World War II?" Apparently, though, what it is Hirsch and Nick Fury have been playing a game of cat and mouse for some time now. But the mousetrap caught Wolverine instead. Who Wolverine is doesn't concern Hirsch. All he cares about is where he's been the past 2 days. Hirsch will tell Wolverine what he knows, and then Wolverine will fill in the blanks afterward. It has all become quite as absurd as these things tend to. You met with Fury 2 nights ago at the foot of the Sechenyi Bridge. I probably butchered that name. Where he handed you some documents. He's been hungry for 2 weeks, trying to find this very building you sit in now. Because of that, we have been trying to find him. So I understand why a group of my men thought they could curry favor with me by disobeying orders and trying to take Fury in themselves. They caught you off guard and produced a set of knives, I am told. You and Fury dealt with my overeager agents, saving me the trouble. Thank you for that. Wolverine says it was his pleasure. Unfortunately, you left one of my men alive. He lost you in the celebration at Vorosmarty Square, but it was enough. He called in with your description as well as your general location and direction. Eventually, Hirsch's men spotted Logan when he stopped to pay his respects at the Liberty Statue. From there, it was easy enough to follow him to the S.H.I.E.L.D. safe house. His men had been looking for any trace of Fury's network for weeks, and Wolverine led them right to it. Put up a hell of a fight with the knives of his, it would seem. But as you learn, cut off one head and two shall take its place. The second wave of his men managed to subdue Hirsch's men managed to subdue Wolverine easily. And they had him now. But Wolverine was never their quarry. Hirsch seriously does not seem to know who Wolverine is. But Hirsch says that Fury knows that Hirsch's net is tightening on him. There's nowhere for him to run. And Wolverine states that there's a problem. Hirsch has a problem. He got a few things wrong. So Hirsch asks, what was it? What all did I get wrong? Logan explains that Fury knew Hirsch was coming. Just before the ambush happened, Fury apparently told Wolverine to leave one alive and also to have fun. Hirsch thinks, though, that no, that can't be the case. Wolverine panicked and got sloppy. Wolverine then, however, retorts by saying that Hirsch's band did exactly what they needed. Hirsch said, well, he reported your description and location back to my men. And Wolverine adds, yeah, almost like we planned it. We then see Fury shooting up the phone booth that the Hydra operative called from. Hirsch then says, so you wanted me to know you were on the game board, is that it? Everything is as you planned, and I'm sure you're pleased to see these documents that my men stopped you from burning. He says, they're coded. Oh, we know about the code. He says, remember the phone call? And he then says, remember the phone call you wanted my men to make? My men found you in the key of Fury's little code 3 minutes later. It's added a phone number for extraction. So Hirsch says, perhaps it's time that him and Fury spoke. Tells an agent to trace the call. He adds that for a man who made no mistakes, nothing seems to be going Wolverine's way. And now he's going to lead Hirsch straight to Fury. However, the rest of the file is all about Hirsch. His arrival, his description, orders to kill. He's flattered. It seems all he had to do was find him. However, Hirsch found Wolverine first. We cut back to being captured, and Wolverine asks one of the Hydra troops, what his orders were. The Hydra soldier says that his orders were to bring Wolverine alive to Inquisitor Hirsch. Hirsch just kind of says, fine, have it your way. You found me. Congratulations. However, Wolverine has no more cards left to play, and he was never a threat to Hirsch. And he can't make Hirsch think otherwise. He's had eyes on Wolverine the whole time. No, Wolverine says, no, that's not true. First, he lost his man in the market for 2 minutes, where he picked up a duffel bag. Apparently in the bag was a bomb. There was no bomb found in the safe house. It's explained that the safe house was the second time they didn't have eyes on Wolverine. And the Hydra operative who told Wolverine about the orders to bring Wolverine alive was killed. So then Hirsch asks, okay, fine, let's just pretend this is true. Where is this bomb now? To get to me, you'd have to have it hidden in your... And it starts to click together with Hirsch. With Hirsch saying, it's impossible. He would have bled to death. Wolverine says he heals quick. Apparently the trace is complete on the phone call. So Hirsch asks how he's supposed to trigger the bomb. And he says he's not. Hirsch's. The call is being redirected back to some sort of device. However, before the sentence is completed, there's an explosion and the top of the tower is taken out. Which brings us to the final story of the issue, Cabin Fever. Written and drawn by Declan Shalvey. We start off in upstate New York near the Canadian border. Logan's taking a ride. Judging from the outfit, I would pinpoint this as being probably during the new X-Men era. He laments the fact that he hasn't been to Canada as many times as he'd like. In fact, he's been to the Savage Land more times this year than he's been back up north. But he hears a baby crying in the distance. So he goes and tracks down the sound to a cabin. As he gets closer, he starts to smell blood. Finds a man and a woman dead in the house. Here's the baby crying. Baby crying is probably why he couldn't hear the penny drop. The penny being 9 trained hitmen outside. Apparently, Wolverine walks straight into a trap. So he places the baby in an oven. I know. There's a safe place. Honestly, safe place to keep the kid out of the way. Let's be completely honest. It's not turned on, so he doesn't turn the oven on. It was there. As he tries to reason with the hitmen he's promptly shot to pieces, shot to hell. Gets up and promptly kills the hitmen. None of them leave the house in less than 2 pieces. And we actually get this really beautiful shot by Shalvey of Wolverine standing over their, kneeling over their bodies, claws out. Yeah, I mean, the little dialogue box on here says, well, first, it's continuing from the previous page. He says that what the fools didn't count on was being trapped in there with him. And so Wolverine leaves calms down, leaves the building as a state trooper pulls up, and he explains what's going on to the trooper. You know, says, hey, you know, there's a bunch of dead bodies inside there, and I'm pretty sure you already know that. And the Stady tells him what's going on. Stady'd been on the take with a serious crew helping to smuggle arms over the border. Partner found out and made him out, quit on his deal. The crew weren't so happy, so they decided to make a real example out of him and his partner. Partner's lying on the floor inside. He got word of the hit and came here to warn her, but didn't make it in time. And so he says, you know, he let her down and it's all his fault. So Wolverine does kind of say that ain't for him to say, but his partner did right by him, and he tried to do right by her. He chose this road a while ago, but she paid the cost. Sounds to him like he's got a debt to pay as he handed over the kid to the partner. And he says the kid's a survivor now. Came through a bloodbath without a scratch on her. Just like him in a way, only his scratches heal after he gets them. Then the fever passes, the fog clears, and he goes back into the cold. The cold he can handle. That is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Deadpool number 8. Where we left off, Wade and Elsa Bloodstone had gone to the Bone Beast dimension to tackle the Bone Beast Queen in the hopes of potentially saving Elsa's life. However, upon arrival, it turns out that it was really just a ploy of Elsa's to get Deadpool there to become host for the Bone Beast Queen. Yeah. So Deadpool wakes up hanging upside down with a bunch of kids and Elsa and Jeff. Elsa's been in and out of consciousness and managed to teach one of the kids how to save Mr. Deadpool. And then that kid then taught the rest. But Wade very much wants to know why Elsa sold him out. And she explains that she may have told a bit of a lie when she said that she escaped the Bone Beast realm. She did not so much escape as be let go so that she could bring someone back to be the Queen's new host. But using a rather small knife, Deadpool was able to cut himself free. Turns out there's a bunch of weapons on the floor of the cave, though, so he starts slicing and dicing and freeing the kids and Elsa and Jeff. And they work on a plan. First, they arm the kids. Deadpool states that if any of the kids shoot or stab him, Elsa, or Jeff, he would say there would be hell to pay, but they're sort of already in hell, so we guess things would just be the same. There is potentially an aperture for the scene, but it's surrounded by bone beasts. Elsa opts to be the distraction since she's not strong enough to protect them since she's dying. So she goes off as a distraction. Deadpool and Jeff get the kids out, and he looks and sees her having fallen, and so Deadpool goes to rescue them. Back on Staten Island, well, Monster Island now. The Regent is hearing grievances from the citizenry in the absence of the king, and he actually Feels bad for Deadpool. hearing everyone's grievances is exhausting and horrible. So a citizen arrives and explains that when he's asked how the Crown can help today, he explains he was walking through the woods yesterday and swore on he saw something. And he's pretty sure it was a member of the Dia Monstri cult, which gets our regent to have a spit take. More on that later, though. Like, next issue or so. In the Bone Beast dimension, though, Deadpool is slicing and dicing his way through the Bone Beasts. You know, he's got lots of weapons and no waiting, and they're lucky he's on the clock because he's feeling extra vengeancey. Oh, he ate a hole in his chest. Curse him for being so delicious. He doesn't care how many teeth they have or how weird they are, and usually he likes weird. It's where he's most comfortable. But they've made it impossible to be on their side because the Bone Beast side sucks. So he gets to Elsa. And he's trying to figure out a way to heal her. And he realizes this is all because of the Bloodstone, right? So he takes off her glove, pulls out his knife, and pops the Bloodstone out of it. And then picks it up himself and gets Bloodstoned up. And just explains the reason she didn't do that in the first place is because she knew that the Bone Beast Queen would come and eat her whole. Well, the Bone Beast Queen wants the stone and Elsa. And Deadpool gets himself bloodstoned up and tells her, hey, the infection sucks, but the superpowers are serious business. So, he hopes that the Bone Beast Queen brought more than the broken down minions she's already been facing because he already tore them up. So, she's gonna need an army to get to Elsa. The Queen simply says, an army? No problem. As more Bone Beasts occur, and Deadpool says all the Bone Beast has is problems, lady, and all of her problems are called Deadpool. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Miles Morales Spider-Man number 20. Where we left off, Miles and Prowler had been kidnapped by Ultimatum, and he'd also been making moves he was also planning to capture Miles' parents. And Ultimatum explained that Miles and his family are actually from a parallel universe. They'd been folded into the regular universe, but he is in fact the real Miles Morales of Earth 616, not them, not Spider-Man. And so, but he wants to send Miles and his family back to Earth 1610, the ultimate universe. Turns out the Prowler has been playing possum and damages the machine, gets free, and also Ultimatum is making his big play to take over Brooklyn using a drug kind of derived from the Earth 1610 Goblin Serum, turning those that take it into goblinoids, which also explains why he was forcing people to do so. But it turns them into goblinoids when he wants. So basically it gives him an army at his beck and call. And well, he's decided that tonight is when they're going to be at his beck and call. Or is when he's going to make the call. And he's going to take down every player, everyone above the corner dealers. Crime when it comes to the criminal element in Brooklyn. And then just take over and make it all his. So we begin. Prowler and Spider-Man are wading through goblinoids, and I mean wading through because there are a ton of these bastards, and they're wading through them, but they're also they also when they do have to make tactical retreats. And they're trying to figure. Also, they want to make sure they can figure out how the signal to prevent what's going to happen. So Ultimatum said that he was going to use a light wave to activate the Goblin drug and raise his little army. He's going to figure out how he's generating the wave before it can be done. Miles says all, or Prowler said, no. Miles says all that just like a microsecond before the light wave goes off. Miles' parents see it, and his mom reminds Miles' dad that this Ultimatum guy has their son. And Jeff says not for long. He's going to bring him back. However, he wants Rio to keep an eye on the guys who tried taking them, and keep an eye on their baby. And she picks up one of their laser pistols and states that anyone steps to her and the baby, they get a face full of laser pistol. And so Jeff goes up to find Miles. Nearby, Cap is taking the Miles' friends home from their recent incarceration by Cradle, but there are goblinoids, and so Cap does what he can to subdue them when Jeff appears and saves Cap's butt. And explain that Miles was kidnapped. But Kank mentions, this is an Avengers hover car, right? With autopilot and security measures. Electrical defense field, so... And, Cap says, well, yeah, but I can't allow the kids to... And, they say, one of them says they're barely kids. They've done drills for terrorists and active shooters. They survived their school being attacked. And they can get home in a self-driving car that zaps things, even with the goblins running around. But Miles needs Cap. And Cap realizes, okay, these kids are set on it, so yeah. He sends the car to take care of the kids. Meanwhile, Prowler and Miles are dealing with the goblinoids. Prowler tries to make a sacrifice play, but telling Miles to run while he holds the goblinoids off. But Miles says that's not happening. They go down together. And they get some reinforcements in the form of Bombshell and Starling. Who actually, all three of them managed to take down the goblinoids pretty easily, and not hurting them too much. However, then the Ultimate Green Goblin shows up and Miles claims him. So the two of them duke it out while Prowler, Bombshell, and Starling handled more of the goblinoids. Turns out Ultimatum just wants Spider-Man and Prowler alive. Starling and Bombshell are expendable as far as he's concerned. However, Cap and Miles' dad show up. And Cap asks Miles what the call is. He says, the call? We kick butt. Cap says it's not a very precise strategy, but it works. And Miles continues taking his fight with the Ultimate Green Goblin until, beating him. And continuing to beat him. Until his father comes and stops him. Saying, hey, Goblin's done. Young man. Totally not my son. However, the assembled group is told they're done as well, as a giant-sized ultimatum arrives. Which makes sense, seeing as how a massive portion of Ultimate's costume is the Ultimate Giant Man costume. So yeah. He tells Spider-Man this is his last night on this Earth. That is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our last book for this video. Here in a second. Web of Venom. Empyre's End. As you can guess, this does involve the coming of Null. So we begin aboard Skrull ship, the Outer Realm, 23rd Quadrant, 267 clicks from Garth's northern moon. They've received a distress signal. Origin of it's unclear. Single missive on a continual relay. Do not attempt to rescue. Of course, the escape pod is brought on board. Turns out, the person in the pod is none other than the Skrull Talos. The commander of the ship is a Skrull general named Calamari, and he asks Talos what happened. Explained after the events of Empyre, Emperor Hulkling learned of a troubling pattern at the edge of Kree Skrull space. They lost contact with their outpost on planet Egnak. One day they simply stopped transmitting. Silence. Skrull intelligence learned that the same happened on the planet Tantanet, a Spartaxian colony. Then Myark, and finally Ganaret. All small colonial research outposts, little to no resources to speak of, no major military presences, no warships. And Talos was ordered by Emperor Hulkling to assemble a small crew, and he was given a ship to investigate. They expected to need to solve a technical error. Probably just a down transmitter. They didn't realize that the planets formed some kind of path through the galaxy, however. The crew, we have Captain in the Kree Skrull Army, Avram, has a history with Emperor Hulkling. Kia, Kree pilot and former Starjammer. Malans, a Kree intelligence officer who followed an assignment to Earth and stayed there. Tarna, a sometime space knight who will help anyone in need. And Ethan Edwards, an orphaned Skrull sent to Earth as a child, tried to be a hero, didn't work out too well, now loyal to the Empire. I've actually got the initial story with Ethan Edwards from Marvel Knights Spider-Man. It was actually kind of amusing. They kind of play him off in a Superman kind of fashion. But yeah. They find some escape pods, but there's something inside. Malans notes that there's something inside the something smudged on the porthole. Could be blood on the escape pods. And that bring one of the pods on board, and they open it, and something gets loose. There's something in there with the occupant. Avram tells everyone to stay back but yeah, it's a symbiote. And Malans realizes that's what the pods are full of. Avram tells Ethan and Malans to run, and the symbiote goes after him. So Ethan and Malans do just that, shutting doors behind them. However, the symbiote manages to crack through and grabs Ethan. Outside, something bigger shows up. Dragons. And one of them gets to Kia, popping his suit. Malans explains to the remaining crew that Avram and Ethan are likely dead. The pods are full of symbiotes, and they're now inside the ship. They're next. They don't get out of there now. So they set course for the Plutarch star system, and they figure once there they can alert. However, the dragons hit the ship and begin to consume it, ripping their way in and allowing more symbiotes in as well. And yeah, it does appear that Ethan at least gets turned by one. These symbiotes are being created directly by Null, and based on his Thrall. So the self-destructive mechanism on the ship is set. The three Skrulls decide they're going to wade through the symbiotes. Karna offers to stay behind, provide a distraction, but Talos says that no, they're all escaping together. One of the symbiotes explains that they're here to ease everyone's suffering and everyone's pain the galaxy over. The artificial gravity gets turned off and they make their way to the pods, but the symbiotes are adapting to the zero-G. Tarna, having dealt with a symbiote before, attacks the symbiote that used to be Ethan. And in fact, that symbiote senses her codex. And she goes to kill. She goes after the symbiote, but it forms a blade and runs her through. They find Avram trussed up, kind of like one of those alien movies, like Alien. Avram asks to be killed, and Talos obliges. As they make their, he places Malans in one of the pods, and then explains that someone has to stay behind to distract the symbiotes and keep anyone away from the ship. The pod is released, and Talos meets Null. He says that he is next. Talos runs into one of the pods, and the pod escapes. So it's unknown if Milan's pod escaped, but the ship explodes, and then Talos was picked up. And he explains that his signal wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a call for help. It was a warning. Because the symbiotes aren't coming. They're here. And that is how the issue ends. Yes, I think this is actually the last of the Web of Venom one-shots before King in Black starts up in a month. King in Black kind of being the next big step in Donny Cates's running Venom story. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.